Well, welcome to another My Life in Football. And joining me today, I've got to say, he's probably the biggest guest we've ever had on this My Life in Football, the one I've been excited for at least about a month, knowing that the gentleman was coming on. And of course, joining me today is the one, the only Mr. Laurence Jones. And Laurence, I'm absolutely bit nervous, but also very, very much looking forward to our chat today. So a massive welcome and thank you for saying you'll come on.
Thank you, David. Delighted to be with you. I'm certainly big these days. There's no doubt about that, but I'm not sure. But big in stature, I think.
Well, we were both at the Southern League Awards ceremony, and I think I sort of had a little bit of a chat with Jason Mills afterward, a couple of days later, and all the rest of it, and spoke to a few other people. And I think one of the biggest highlights for me in that whole event, for me, other than sort of comparing it for the first time, etc., was how well you spoke. In the evening. I thought it was absolutely superb, to the point. And it was one of those things where I think you had everybody that was in that room in the palm of your hand. And I'd just like to say personal thank you for that, because I thought it was a fantastic speech on the evening.
Thank you. That's very kind of you, David. I mean, it's I've been in football. Well, I mean, I'm past 60 now, so certainly past 50 years in one way or another. And I guess our level of the game, the National League system, has played a huge part in my life. And so I am very passionate about it. I'm incredibly proud of it. I'm very proud of the role I have at the FA to help develop and support and administer it. I think I also have a strong affinity to the Southern League, as I was a match official in the league from the sort of late 80s to, in fact, when I retired through injury in 2001. So this level of the game is very special to me. It's also, as I said in my speech, it's the golden nugget of English football. This unique pyramid that we have in this country, made up of 940 odd clubs, all of whom play an incredible role, not just in developing football and providing football for all sorts of age groups, let alone the first teams, but the role they play in their communities, and within those clubs, there are just so many amazing volunteers, people whose love, passion, and enjoyment of the game doesn't know any barriers. And so, surely that is something we should be celebrating and trying to develop and trying to grow, because if you take that chunk of football out of our national game, it's going to leave a pretty big hole.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was a fantastic night, and I must admit it was a great night. But everybody that doesn't know, of course, Laurence is the head of the National League system at the FA. But of course, what we're here today, we'll go into a bit more, if we can, around what your job entails a bit later. But I mean, going right back to the beginning, I mean, how did a young Laurence Jones get involved in football in the first place?
I guess I might be a bit like a lot of kids from my generation, because I was a 1959 baby. So I suppose my first real strong recollections of football were probably July the 30th, 1966, when Bobby Moore lifted the George Remy Trophy. So I think that sort of started sort of awakened my interest in the game. And then from there, I ended up moving. I lived in Brighton. I ended up moving down to Bournemouth and happened to move. My mum and dad happened to move next door to the then vice chairman of what was Bournemouth and Boscombe Football Club, and now AFC Bournemouth. And I guess that started my lifelong sort of love affair with AFC Bournemouth. And I grew up on the terraces in the late 60s and the 70s. Spent many an hour travelling the motorways, or there weren't that many motorways around in those days, following Bournemouth up and down the lower levels of the football league, and that's how it all started, really. It was it's I look back now and think of some of the things I did as a sort of teenage supporter in those days, and and the sort of the standard of the grounds we went to and the hours we spent traveling. I remember sort of falling out of AFC Bournemouth Supporters Club at midnight on a Friday to start what would end up being a sort of a 23-hour round trip to Hartlepool for a game on Saturday. You know, it's but it was that started the lifelong journey for me, really, and I've been incredibly lucky and incredibly privileged to have a most fantastic life through football. You know, it's a life that's through my refereeing career and then following my refereeing career, my administrative career has brought me some amazing experiences in the game.
Do you ever play the game, Laurence?
I was a sort of a Malcolm McDonald centre forward playing at the height of the Bournemouth Sunday League Division 10, and did actually find the back of the neck more by luck than judgment on most occasions. But I made I started really playing them, I suppose, first as a child, obviously, but reached a point where I started my refereeing career when I was 21, and I was still playing football a bit, and soon realised that actually playing the game, and if I had any serious designs about being a match official, it probably wasn't the greatest combination. I certainly remember it was about the time when the denial goal scoring opportunity change came in, and if you punched the ball off the goal line, you got a red card. And when that came in, I was an active referee, and I played in a Sunday morning game and decided to punch the ball off the goal line and begged the referee not to put the red card in, which he duly did.
And of course, in our last in the chat we've just had before, of course, with Keith, because he tells the story of himself and Tony Gow when that sort of situation came in as well. So he was fair. But I mean, with that though, I mean, with Bournemouth, any sort of funny stories with following Bournemouth in the early years?
There wasn't a lot of there's certainly no glory. Most of my years following Bournemouth were in the lower reaches of the third division, and then it got even more dismal into the fourth division in those days. I suppose what started the love affair, I was privileged, I suppose, that my first real taste of regular watching Bournemouth play was in the halcyon days of John Bond and Ted McDougall and Phil Boyer, and crowds of 20-odd thousand at the old Dean Court. And I think you got as a child you got sucked in to the atmosphere. And I can remember my first evening games. I still can smell it now, the smoke coming out of the stands with people smoking, and it was that was really good. I mean, unfortunately, that you soon learn as a supporter that those halcyon days don't come around too often, and it was soon back to the bread and butter, and the club struggling, unfortunately. But I remember one season I managed to do 45 out of 46 of the league games in the season, but I missed the last game of the season, ironically. And I remember on successive Tuesdays we had Halifax away and York City away, which from Bournemouth in those days was a long old trip. Yeah. The same 13 supporters went on the bus to both games, and I remember going. Certainly, I think it was the York City game. I mean, there's a broken down old bus anyway. They were dreadful coaches, not like the luxury things today. I sort of woke up in the middle of the night as we're driving down a very foggy M1. And it suddenly dawned on me, actually, the driver had got it wrong. He was on the wrong side of the motorway. And somehow he managed to resolve it. And, everyone was terrified, absolutely terrified. It was a real pea super. And it was, I mean, what I did find was I really got heavily involved in the club, though, because the club was, quite a small club really in those days. Football was very different, wasn't it? So there were myself and two friends, we formed the first ever junior supporters club. And so all of a sudden, as a 17, 18-year-old, we were taking groups of kids to away games. We ran two football teams. So I was a coach or a manager at 18, and it was and the club were really supportive of that. It was a very different environment to how football is today. And so I wouldn't say there was lots of funny stories. I suppose there was a few skirmishes that happened in those days. I remember getting separated from the mates at QPR and had to run for my life from a group of QPR fans. I suddenly found myself in the wrong end of the ground and sort of had to work my way around that. It was all part of growing up as part of the football family. It's I can remember we had I think it also exposed me perhaps to my first experiences some of the pressures that managers go under. I remember I was only 17, 18 at the time, and we formed this junior supporters club, and John Benson was the Bournemouth manager then, used to play for Man City, being the Man City manager at one time. And the club was going through a really, really difficult period, and the crowd turned on him, and some of the junior supporters were doing the same sort of thing. They were sort of making, wanting the managerial change, and I got summoned to the manager's office to explain why the junior supporters were doing that. That was, so I think I had quite an early taste of what the pressure of football was at that level.
Yeah.
And I was a very typical football supporter. I had all sorts of opinions about decisions and referees and how it was. And it's how I got into refereeing, actually, because I normally moaned about the referee because Bournemouth lost most weeks, and it's always the referees. It was always the referee's fault. And I have a very, very dear friend, the groundsman John Harris of Bournemouth, who sadly no longer is with us. John basically pinned me against a wall one Monday after the game and said to me, "Stop moaning about the referees. If you think you do a better job, go and be one." And of course, as a terrestrial field 18-year-old, I said, "Okay, I'll go and be a referee then. You watch me." And that got me into refereeing, and best decision I ever made, if I'm honest. Yeah.
So getting into so you got into refereeing at what, 18?
Yeah, I qualified. I started doing a few games unofficially as an unqualified referee, and then I sort of got a bug for it, to be honest, and then went through the referee's course. And I remember, I did my course and passed my exam in the front room of a local Class 1 referee, and I actually started refereeing properly when I just turned 21, actually, and it was in the Bournemouth leagues. And to be honest, I had no aspirations. I was qualified as a referee. Seemed to, sort of got a bit of a bug for it, to the extent where that's when I probably started drifting away from watching Bournemouth play football. And to be honest, when I started, my only aspiration was to go and referee local football, youth football, adult football. When I had my 20-year career, I was privileged enough to get to the line of the Football League and referee on the Southern League, and then what was the the football conference in those days, and had an absolutely brilliant journey and a few experiences on the way.
And it's a tough gig as well, isn't it, refereeing? I mean, I know me and my daughter both went for the test and both passed on the same day. I'd got a bit of experience with a bit like what you'd said, where you were doing it sort of like, where you hadn't actually got wasn't a proper referee, but you've been doing it for quite some period of time, and we both went in and did it. And then, unfortunately, after a couple of seasons, my daughter was doing really, really well at it. And then, as usual, you got the sort of the abuse from the parents and stuff like this. And in the end, one of the parents got into my daughter's face when she was only sort of like 15, 16, whatever it was she was at the time. And she decided, "Dad, I don't want to do this anymore." I was reffing, somebody else came over crying and decided not to do it, which was a real shame because she was really good and probably could have gone a long way in it as well, but, in doing it. But it is a tough gig. And did you get anything like that in your sort of early times?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the issue with parents and youth football, it's always been there. Is it worse today? Yes, I think it is. I think it's far harder starting out on that referee journey today than because I think society's changed so much. So, but even when I started qualified in 1980, it was still tough then. Yeah, I mean, I only had one situation. I was very fortunate in my career where I was threatened, and that was by a 15-year-old actually in a youth game, and which is really sad to see. The game was very different to referee in the 80s and 90s up until I retired than it is today. The expectations were still there, but I mean, firstly, the laws of the game were different. The laws of the game are far tighter these days. When I was refereeing, you were able to build that relationship with players on the pitch and talk to the players, and and sometimes that can get you in trouble. But it's you had more opportunity to manage the game. I think with refereeing today, the referees are under so much pressure to make sure they apply law correctly. They don't. Some of that opportunity to manage the game has been taken away from them, and I think that is difficult. We have a lot of young referees now, and they're sometimes they are put in some very challenging positions, and without referees we haven't got a game. It's not acceptable for referees to be abused and attacked and assaulted. It's totally unacceptable, and anybody who does that sort of thing shouldn't be allowed near a football pitch in their life. It's just not acceptable. There's no need for it. Yes, it is an emotive game, but there has to be boundaries, and we've got to look after our referees. And it's ironic because I think the training now for the referees and the development of referees has never been better. It's really good. But no, it was. I still remember my first game, which was a working man's club called Talbot Rise, third team against Westmore. Was on a council pitch somewhere. I ain't got a clue what I was doing. I was like a headless chicken, but I seemed to get an affinity to it. And before I knew it, I was on the line of the Southern League and going to grounds like in those days Andover, Bashley, Dorchester, Weymouth, and it was suddenly realised that what a level of football it was. I mean, and going back to the 80s, there were some very big clubs in the Southern League.
And I mean, with that, I mean, when you do you're doing sort of the refereeing part of it, when you're sort of unqualified, you think you know what you're doing, and as soon as you go through that test, as you just said, you get to that first game, all of a sudden it's like, hang on a minute, where you would be so much confident the week before, but then when it comes to the week,
I think everyone's expectations of you is different, aren't they? It's week before you say, "Oh, thanks for doing the game, it's really kind of you. We haven't got a referee, really appreciate you doing it." You walk out there with all the kit and all the cards and the whistle and the watches, and it's well, we're paying you now. This is a job you've got to do. You expect to get it right. I suppose it's not unreasonable, but at the end of the day, a referee's got to learn their trade as much as the player's got to learn their trade, and it was. It was quite funny. I remember coming towards the end of my career, I was supposed to be at Ipswich Town on the line, and I think it was an international weekend, so the game got called off. And the only game that I could do was probably, I think it was the bottom two clubs in the lowest division of the Bournemouth Saturday League. And I said, I'll go and do that. I'd love to do it. And I had the best 90 minutes of my life. I feel sorry for the poor referee who followed me because I just refereed how I wanted to referee, and it was just great fun, but I'm sure the referee who followed me cursed me the following week. But it was, I was able just to drift through the game and have a laugh and a giggle with the players, and it was really great. It was great fun. The refereeing in certainly in the sort of 2 or 3 decades or 2 decades I had, it was just. There was a great comradeship. There was a great. I was fortunate enough that I was chairman of the Southern League Match Officials Association, so I got on really close relationship with the league, and we had a lot of fun. We had some great. We always had an annual family weekend come. So it was supposed to be a bit of a referees conference. It turned out to be, as referees do well, they party hard, and it's we used to. Go to places like Buckingham where we hired a hotel, and it was just great fun. Lots of parties, lots of fun, lots of sore heads. I remember my final year as chair. I was we had a conference in Bournemouth, and they decided that we had a black tie event, so we finished the dinner, and then it was decided that they're going to throw me in the swimming pool. I wasn't going to have that, so. But they did. They lifted me up in the chair, carried me out of the room, and just threw me and the chair in the swimming pool. And then everybody else jumped in with it, all in their best suits and everything. Much to the displeasure of the hotel room, who probably banned us from ever going back there again. It's but it's important to have that fun side of refereeing.
I'll have to find out why they didn't do that to Anthony Hughes at the Southern League. Then.
Yeah, I wanted Terry to get everyone singing the national anthem, because I did say to him that with Anthony coming on board, we'll be singing the Welsh anthem for the next 3 or 4 years.
With that, we've been a referee as well. Is it a situation where referees? I never got to that situation, but when you get to the end of sort of every sort of season, are you hoping to get that phone call or a letter or an email saying you're going to be promoted?
Yeah, it becomes not when you. I don't think you do when you. Well, everyone's different, aren't they? For me, once I got onto the Southern League line, I suddenly realised that I'd gone from the greatest of it, probably being a hobby referee into more of a career referee. The level of commitment needed when you get onto the Southern League and above is that you just got to be available and be available when you're needed. So I was very fortunate. BT never knew it. I worked for BT for 25 years. The 20 years I worked for them as a referee, they were very supportive. And unfortunately, I managed my own diary, so I had great flexibility in terms of being availability to do match. And yes, you do. I think everyone gets caught up in the ambition. You want to, because the further you go up the tree, the more you want it, because you see you're getting close to what it is. And I never expected to get the Football League line, and I was really lucky. I walked up, run the line at Stamford Bridge in front of 35,000 people on TV. I never dreamt that would happen. And do you get an adrenaline kick? Of course you get an adrenaline kick from it. If you don't get an adrenaline kick games like that, then you probably haven't got the passion for the game that you need to help you move forward anyway. And it's I think the ambition does kick in. I don't regret a minute of my refereeing career, because it helped me develop as a person as well. Although I think the one thing we don't give enough recognition to in refereeing is all the soft skills it helps you develop as a person. I was the fat kid at school. I was rubbish at sport. I'm not academic in any way at all. And I can honestly say that I went out to work at 16 with BT. Everything I've learned, I can track back to refereeing. Learned in terms of speaking, how to management of people, management of situations, administration, everything. All my learnings I can track back to my refereeing career. I'm sure without my refereeing career and all the soft skills I've learned from it, I wouldn't have enjoyed the things I've enjoyed in my professional life.
Well, can you remember your first game? So you sort of doing sort of like Saturday, Sunday morning football.
Yeah,
then you get into that sort of Southern League. I mean, can you remember that sort of, that sort of feeling and what the first game was?
Yeah, my first game was Talbot Rise versus Westmoreland in the Bournemouth League. I then progressed on to sort of the county league in Hampshire, and then I went on to the Wessex League. And I remember in my first season in the Wessex League, by chance I ended up end of the season refereeing Wellworthy versus Bashley, which ended up being the title decider, which Wellworthy never forgave me for. My first middle in the Southern League was at Newport Isle of Wight, and I can't remember who they were playing now. I think it was a Kent team. I was quite a regular visitor to the Isle of Wight, living in Bournemouth at the time. The league always sent me there on Boxing Day. There was only two boats, one that went about 9 o'clock in the morning and one that came at 5 at night. And the game always kicked off about midday, so I ended up spending the whole day on so I was leaving home about 7 in the morning and getting home about 7 at night, and spent the whole day on the Isle of Wight. So that was quite a regular occurrence, me going across there. My most memorable game in the Southern League, but any doubt, I picked it up actually. I wasn't the original appointed referee, but I refereed Forest Green against Merthyr Tydfil, which was the title decider for the championship, with obviously the winners getting promoted to the football conference. And that was at the old Forest Green ground. I think there was over 3,000 people in there that night, and of which a good 1,500 came from Merthyr, and it was a hell of a game, tremendous game of football.
You wasn't getting no abuse from Anthony Hughes on the touchline, though, were you?
Anthony still hasn't forgiven me, because Merthyr, I sent a Merthyr player off in the second half. And I think they lost 1-0 from memory, and he still brings it up whenever I see him on a very regular basis. In fact, every time I see him, he mentions it.
I mean, with that, what's the step like moving from sort of the Wessex League into the Southern League? I mean, what is that? Is it a big step?
Yeah, it's huge. It's from a refereeing point of view. I think it's huge from a club point of view, because I'm a voluntary chief executive at a Step 4 club, so I'm seeing it from the club perspective now as well. And I think at every jump in football is quite big anyway, for various reasons, be it the administration, be it the standard of football, be in the environment or whatever. But going from the Wessex to the Southern was a big jump. going from the Southern to the Football League line was a huge jump. I was quite blessed in some respects that because I was really the only Football League official in Bournemouth, I often ended up refereeing, although I wasn't a Football League referee, I often ended up refereeing some of the Bournemouth pre-season friendlies. I had a close relationship with the club. I'd do a lot of their behind closed door games. And so I was quite well prepared because of that. That was a great schooling for me. But it is a big jump, and people shouldn't ever underestimate those jumps and how important it is to be prepared for them. And both, I think both club wise and refereeing wise, it is a big jump. Yeah, the expectations are higher, the environment's different.
I mean, as a referee in that league, I mean, was you? I suppose it's interesting to get your sort of point of view on it. And then you sit at certain games and you see sort of an assessor in the crowd, and then all of a sudden, then you got like the referee that was here maybe 2 weeks ago that refereed the game with common sense. Now referees the game, like he's in the Premier League because there's an assessor there. So, I mean, did you used to find that hard if you knew there was an assessor, in the league, and did you sort of maybe referee it a little bit differently?
Not consciously. I don't think I was clever enough to. I'm a great believer, like a player. You have your core, don't you? You have your core skills. I think referees have their core game as well. It's. I think the game can dictate. How a referee goes. I think referees. They do. A referee does their very best to be consistent from game to game. And I think that's what clubs expect if they have a referee, because clubs do their homework, so they know the referees they're getting. If they have a referee, they hope the referee referees the same way every time they have them. It's when the referee doesn't referee the same way for whatever reason, and that's not a criticism of the referee, but that can sometimes that creates some of the challenges, I think, because clubs like consistency quite reasonably. It's games that dictate. And listen, I've been on games where I've gone out there and for whatever reason, the chemistry hasn't worked. It's as simple as that. I mean, I can remember an afternoon at Cheltenham where I think they were playing, I don't know, it might have been Crawley or Gravesend, I can't, where I thought the game was going all right. And I remember Lindsay Parsons saying to me, because I got to know Lindsay quite well following the game, it was the worst refereeing performance he'd ever seen. He was probably right. But it's very difficult. There are some games when you're a referee, it's really hard to bring them in line. I was a very talkative referee, and I always worked very closely with the captains and any other player on the pitch, really. The hardest, one of the things I always found, one of the hardest things was those players who didn't want to talk to you. I found that really difficult. That can be quite difficult. I think there's many factors, even down to most games when I refereed in the Southern League were played in front of several hundred people or whatever. But there was the odd game where there might be 2,000 people. Yeah, you get a Weymouth Dorchester derby with 3,000 people. They're big games of football. They raise the bar. I was very privileged that I refereed 3 FA Vase quarterfinals. They're both in terms of playing in them or being a match official in them. They are big games.
You talking about that? Did you ever get to Wembley to officiate on line or ref?
Well, the answer is officially no. Unofficially, when they were closing the old Wembley down, I was asked to run the line on a friendly between the TV Stars 11 and the Pop Stars 11. That was my only appearance at Wembley. But I will treasure. I can say I have run the line at the old Wembley Stadium.
That must have been a thrill, though. It must have been a thrill.
Yeah, I was amazed how dilapidated it was, if I'm honest. I mean, the changing rooms were just so tired. It was fantastic to be out there in the old stadium, in front of 100 people in the ground that held 90,000 people. But it was a tremendous privilege just to do it, just to say, yeah, I have run the line there. But it was so tired, the stadium. And you look at then you look at the new stadiums. We are so lucky in this country with the stadium we've got, both at Wembley, but also the club grounds we now have, and that's really great to see. Even at the level of the game I'm professionally involved in at the FA, to see how the grounds are improving. I mean, the facility investment in this country over the last 10, 15 years is really beginning to show through now.
Yeah, I mean,
I can remember refereeing on pitches where there wasn't a blade of grass.
Yeah.
If you look at the quality of pitches now.
Yeah, absolutely, they're amazing. Yeah, I mean, talking to Wembley, I mean, Wembley's one of those ones where I've been there before to see a game in the old Wembley. I've been there to see games and stuff in the new Wembley, but I still prefer the old girl. I don't know why. It just feels like there's not. It may be.
I think the atmosphere was better in the old.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it was just that whole. I think it's probably memories of when you was a kid, when you'd have, wake up in the morning, have your breakfast, and there was World of Sport and Grandstand on, and you'd have the whole day for the FA Cup final.
Oh yeah, you must have been like me. I bet you grew up on that, didn't you? I mean, yeah. I remember my first FA Cup final was Liverpool Man United in '75 when Man United won, I think it was, or '74, but I lived for cup final day. So you got up, you had your breakfast. You didn't move from the TV until the game was over, did you?
No, and it was, and just that the walk, from the tunnel onto the pitch, the whole shebang. And when I remember going into the new Wembley for the first time, and I think it was an Isthmian League do, and we were given a tour. We got a free tour thing there at the time that they sorted out, and we were walking around, and it just felt small. I know it's probably not, and it's probably just you sort of your head sort of telling you it's small, but it just felt small compared to the old Wembley. Do you know what I mean? But I think it's more because it's so steep, isn't it? The new Wembley.
It's a third of a kilometre around the 5th floor in Wembley. I'll tell you that because I walk around it occasionally because we have a bit of a training circuit up there. But its land mass is different because it's taller, isn't it? If you're sat up in the 5th, the top of Wembley, the new Wembley Stadium, you're closer to the moon than you are the pitch actually on most games. So it's a long way up there, isn't it?
It certainly is. Yeah, lovely ground still though. Very still really.
I mean, the atmosphere for the Euros was tremendous. I have to say that. The England games are superb. But I do think it hasn't quite got the old Wembley roar of the old ground.
No, I'm fully with you. I just don't think there's a comparison there. But
so I might be showing my age on that a little bit.
But then I'd say the same thing about the Emirates and Highbury as well. But there we go.
So would I actually. I mean, as a Bournemouth fan, I have to say the Emirates is the quietest ground I've ever been to.
It just hasn't got the same feel. Like you could.
I'm one of the best men. I actually refereed two reserve team games in the football combination at Highbury. Just to walk in that front door and see the bust of Herbert Chapman and everything. Just I'm a football nut. I've been in this. I just everything I do is football in my life. The legacy and the history of the game is just immense.
Yeah, I mean the same thing with. I mean, I know we're going off the thing a little bit, but it's exactly the same sort of thing when we was on holiday a couple of years ago. I managed to get a tour of one of the grounds I've always wanted to have a tour around, which was Anfield.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I walked into there and it was the weirdest thing ever because I walked in there and I hadn't even gone up the stairs, but I got goosebumps the minute I walked inside the door. Not my team at all. And then when we walked out to the director's level, and you got an introduction from Klopp, and then you walked out and you walked into, and it was like, wow, this place is incredible. And then the only thing that I noticed with it and again, it's probably being a kid of when that game actually happened, but I always remember in '89 when the famous game when Arsenal won the league at Anfield, and you see the Arsenal fans celebrating in the top right-hand corner. It felt like they were about a mile up when you actually saw the picture on ITV. And when I actually walked in and I asked one of the officials that were there, and I said, "Whereabouts was it? That which corner was it?" And he pointed it out, and I said to him, "But it's not big enough. It just didn't look tall enough to be able."
I know it's spooky, isn't it?
But it was one of those. I'd love to go there on a game that was full, but even walking in there when it was completely empty, it was the weirdest feeling ever. It just you know, I didn't even get that when I went to the Emirates or through Tottenham's ground or through Wembley other time. The minute you walked out into that stadium, you just got massive goosebumps the minute you walked in there.
Yeah, I went there a couple of times with Bournemouth. Bournemouth's first away game in the Premier League was at Liverpool on a Tuesday night. Just a tremendous day. We spent the afternoon in the Cavern Club and then went to Anfield for the match. And to see, little Bournemouth, my club, playing at Anfield in a full house, just blew me away.
And
you're right, the atmosphere was unbelievable. And
of course, you get to see it again this year as well.
Yeah, well, I don't get to follow them very much these days. I'm too busy at Harbour Town, but it was tremendous.
So, I mean, go back to your refereeing. So you're now sort of into to the Southern League. Did you sort of at that time still have sort of like I don't know, the passion that you wanted to move forward and get into sort of like as it is now Premier League and league football?
Yeah, I mean, I think once I got into the Southern League, the passion was really strong. So yeah, I mean, I worked really hard. I refereed on the panel list of referees. So I did 2 or 3. I think I refereed on the Southern League for 3 years, and I got promoted to the Football League line, and then the year after I got promoted to the Conference and Football Combination and Premier League Reserve League, as it was in those days, plus the Southern League. And to be honest, at the end, I had to retire through injury in 2000, and actually it was 9/11 day. I was on the line at Brighton against Southampton in the League Cup on 9/11, and my Achilles is still running up and down the Woodthing Stadium, unfortunately, and that was the end of my career. But it was I'd be refereeing 3 or 4 times a week, to be truthful, on various games, and it was great. It was a really good time. The ambition was there. I had some really enjoyable, great lines. Went to have some lines with big clubs, and that was a really good experience. I was never quite good enough to get on the Premier League. But I was very privileged. I didn't have any ambition when I started, and I will always be grateful for the opportunity I had. And the Southern League played a big part, because I learned to referee on the Southern League. That's where I really learned to referee. Southern League's tremendous competition to referee on. When I was active, and I'm sure it still is today. It was because there were some very big clubs in the league at that stage, as there still are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So with that though, I mean, when did you sort of get that sort of heads up that you were going to be promoted into sort of running the line
I got the letter I was waiting for. I think it was May 1992. I think my debut was at Exeter City following the start of the new season. And then the following year, I got promoted to the panel. Now, I got my letter for the panel. I didn't actually get the letter. I knew the letter was coming out, but I was flying to America for a holiday. So I actually got a phone call just before I got on the plane at Heathrow to say that I got onto the panel as well, which meant we had a few bottles of bubbly on the way across the Atlantic. I mean, when I was on the Football League line, it was a very different experience. You had fitness tests as you did in the Southern League in those days. And you look at me now and you think, God, I couldn't even run 100 meters these days. In those days, I was probably half the size I am now. But it was, I trained I trained and worked hard to keep fit. It was, and the Football League was a big jump. The pressure. You suddenly realised that you were in a different ballgame. Full-time professional footballers, fitness levels are high, the pressure on the managers are high, the crowd's on your back, and it was, it was great. I loved it. I've got to be honest, loved every minute of it. It was just, in my first season, I was on the Brighton were going through a very tough time with, I think it was Jeffrey Archer. I think they wanted to sell the Goldstone ground, and all sorts of fan unrest. I was on Brighton versus York towards the end of the season on a Saturday. Got down there, someone had broken the ground overnight, sprayed the parts of the pitch blue. So you sense there's a bit of tension flying around. And went out and kicked off as normal 3 o'clock. And to this day, I remember at 3:15, there were 4 whistles around the ground, big whistles. Crowd just came on, broke all the goals down. Game had to be abandoned. And the change room at Brighton, the Goldstone ground, was inside the ground, and there was no external door out of the ground. And so we went back into the change room for our safety, and someone thought it'd be a good idea to lock the door from the outside to protect us in case it did get silly. And all we could hear were chants of "burn the stand," and we couldn't open the door. And it was so anyway, it all got sorted out. But one of the most bizarre games I've ever been on in my life, I had to go back on a Thursday morning a couple of weeks later to replay the game behind closed doors, apart from away fans were allowed. So York brought down, I don't know, 500, 1,000, 1,500 fans, whatever it was, and the rest of the ground was empty, kicked off at 11 o'clock. And I really felt for the referee because he got assessed on it as well. And it was a horrible game to referee because it wasn't like a real game, you know. So yeah, it was. But that was in my first season. So that sort of woke me up to the this is going to be quite an interesting journey on the Football League, I think.
Well, what was that feeling like then? Having to go back there on a Thursday after
weird, absolutely weird. Yeah, it just didn't feel right. I mean, in my day, we didn't really have varying kickoff times. You kicked off at 3 o'clock or 7:45. There wasn't any of this midday kickoff or what have you. When there was the odd occasion that happened, I found it really strange. I've got to be really honest. From a body clock point of view, it just didn't feel right. Yeah, you sort of get into I think as a referee, I was very, I almost obsessive actually about how I prepared for the match on the Saturday, the time I packed my kit, how I packed my kit, what's on my leave, all those sort of things. And if someone knocked me out of that routine, it was weird.
I mean, you said your first game at St James's Park at, of course, Exeter. But I mean, what was the feeling like going into that? Because all of a sudden you're sort of refereeing on the Southern League, and maybe at the end of one season, then all of a sudden at the beginning of the next season, you're sort of going into to run a line at a professional football club. What were the nerves like going into that, and what was it? And how was you feeling in the lead up to that game?
I think it was a mixture of excitement and nerves. I think I was well prepared because I was able to do a lot of Bournemouth games as friendlies. So I sort of I'd already had a taste of it, if you like. It wasn't like I was going in totally cold. So I was perhaps in a better place than some. But it certainly, it really hit me when I came out of the tunnel. I'm sure the crowd was only about 3,500, 4,000. But all of a sudden, that's a big crowd,
Yeah.
And of course, as a junior assistant referee, you probably wouldn't be in front of the dugouts. Being in front of the dugouts, and as my career sort of progressed through years and I guess performance, more and more often I was a senior assistant. One of the strangest games I had, I was fourth official on Bournemouth versus Swansea in an FA Cup tie, and one of the assistants unfortunately had a car accident on the way to the game, so I had to run the line on a proper game at Bournemouth in an FA Cup, knowing all the players and what have you. That was tough. It was, and I remember in the old ground, they called it the new stand. It was a low stand on the far side opposite the seats. And I said, "Don't put me in front of the dugouts. I can't cope with them banging my ear for the whole game. I'll go over the far side." It made sense. Of course, being a Bournemouth boy, I knew all the people in the stand. And the Swansea players cottoned onto it that they all knew my first name after about 20 minutes. Fortunately, nothing controversial happened.
But that must have been a buzz, though, being able to do that for your own team.
Yeah, it was a great buzz. I mean, I was really lucky. I remember when fourth officials first came in, Bournemouth, the local referees, appointment secretaries appointed the fourth officials. You wouldn't dream of it now, would you? You wouldn't think of. I was a Class 1 referee, so I got put on Bournemouth versus Man United as my second year as a Class 1 referee on in an FA Cup tie with Ray Lewis as referee, one of a dear friend of mine, and Ray was brilliant. So you find myself in front of all these Man United stars in the third round of the FA Cup, and I'm fourth official. I was nervous on that one.
Who was the Man United manager at the time? Was that pre-Ferguson?
Yeah, it was pre. I think it might have been Atkinson.
Right.
It was.
So it could have been worse.
It could have been worse. It could have been worse. I came across a few characters, but yeah, Jan Mulby was fun to be in front of, as was George Graham, actually.
Well, I mean, what was your? I mean, with your referee side of it, what was your favourite, favourite sort of game and people that you've met during that time of doing it? I mean, you say George Graham and Jan Mulby and that, but I mean, what was your sort of lasting memory of doing the lines and refereeing?
I think it's so difficult because I never really looked at it in that light. I really loved it. I think my favourite. I think my favourite game referee, my most memorable game refereeing for me has to be the Forest Green Merthyr Tydfil game. I love the 3 FA Vase quarterfinals I refereed. They were fantastic. I really enjoyed those. The Forest Green Merthyr Tydfil game was a hell of a game. Really, that was really fun. I always tend to revert back to that one. Running the line, I was quite lucky. I mean, I did quite a few league, non-league cup ties. I tend to be on the fringe if there was or I might do a league club against what is now a Premier League club. So I suppose Chelsea Villa in the League Cup was a big game for me, as was Fulham Tottenham. I remember those two. They were both very special. It was quite funny the Chelsea Villa one because in the previous round I've been on West Ham Northampton, and Northampton were winning 1-0, and I remember Ian Wright put the ball in the back of the net to equalise for West Ham in about the 90th minute, and I put the flag up to disallow it, and everyone thought it was the right decision until Sky TV took the slow motion replay and showed Harry Redknapp in the dugout that it wasn't the right decision. And it had come at a period when there had been about 3 or 4 weeks of dodgy offsides, and mine certainly was a dodgy offside. I still would have given it offside now because I can't see any other decision, but when you watch it on TV, you can see he wasn't offside. Harry went absolutely ballistic, chased me down the lines. I know Harry quite well. And he then went, Lawrence, you made a ricket, or words to that effect. And Neil Ruddock almost took the changing room door off as we came in after the game. And because Northampton won 1-0. Now, the real funny story was the following night, purely by coincidence, I'm at Brighton refereeing Brighton reserves versus Northampton reserves. You can imagine the reception I got from the Northampton players when they came out. It was so I got a lot of stick, and that's probably the only time my family got a lot of stick as well, because it was, I did take a fair bit of stick over that, and then. But they rewarded me by giving me Chelsea Villa in the following round, which was great. So it was that was all right. So it was. Obviously I was in the era when TV games were just coming in and what have you. The Football League had this most dreadful kit when I was on the line. It was like, it was a motley, speckled sort of kit and what have you. It was, it certainly didn't suit my athletic figure. I remember I was on the line at Reading on a live game, and Alan Green was the commentator. And he absolutely just ripped me to pieces. I don't know how. Look at the size of this assistant referee. How can he possibly be running the line? How did he pass the fitness test? And I was really, really upset by it. To the extent where it was quite abusive actually. So I complained about it, but I also challenged Alan Green to do me to a fitness test. And if he beat me, I'd donate my next match fee to a charity. He never took me up on it.
Surprise.
Surprise.
So with your refereeing, you said you had your last game in your Achilles. Where was that, and how?
Brighton Southampton in the League Cup on 9/11 day. It was I was very lucky with injury. Fairly lucky with injuries. I had a knee op that went badly wrong, and I think it shortened my career really. It was, and so I got 3 years, probably more than I probably should have done. So. These happened, but as it happened at the same time, I was moving into football administration. I've been appointed chief executive of the Hampshire FA, which I never quite know how I got the job, but I got it. And from there on, I've had an administrative career. I did 6 years at Hampshire, then I did 2 years as chief executive at Bournemouth. Left Bournemouth to come up to Leicestershire for 3 months as cover as chief executive, and stayed up here ever since. Did 3.5 years at the county FA in Leicestershire, then joined the FA in 2011, and I'm now been 10 years at Harbour Town as voluntary chief executive. So I've sort of, hung up all the active stuff and heavily involved in football administration. So
massive thank you, Laurence, for being with us today for part 1 of his My Life in Football. We'll be back next week with part 2 of Laurence's My Life in Football, when we talk all about his position at the FA and all of the other work that he's done since giving up his refereeing. We will talk to him all about that next week on My Life in Football. But until then, from me and from Laurence, good night.
Good night.